Welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Rinaldi. This is a space to explore the full spectrum of grief, from the kind that comes with death to the kind that shows up in life's many transitions. Through stories and conversations, we remind each other that we're not alone. Your journey matters, and here we're figuring it out together. Let's dive right in to today's episode. Let's start with a quick disclaimer. This podcast includes personal stories and perspectives on topics like grief, health, and mental wellness. The views expressed by guests are their own and may reflect individual experiences that are not meant as medical advice. As the host, I hold space for diverse voices, but that does not mean I endorse every viewpoint shared. Please listen with care and take what resonates with you. Today, I am chatting with author Diane Namm. She is the author of over 65 titles, primarily children's books, young adult books, and nonfiction adult books. And her most recent book is a picture book called What Happens After, and it is about the love that you feel and then just respecting the grieving process. So welcome,
Thank you
Diane,
so
to the
much.
podcast. Thank you
Thank you
for
so
being
much for
here.
having me.
Thank you for sharing and I got to read your book. It's beautiful. It's not, children's books go deeper than just for children. I remember when I would read to my kids some of these books of like I love you forever and ever and always. Like some of these little things that I would like memorize and I'd get all moved and teary eyed. So I think sometimes authors know that the ones reading it are the parents and that they're going to be the ones that are going to be, oh.
Without question. I mean, we do know that that's how the children first get to hear the books. And so, yes, almost always we're writing for both adult and children at the same time.
And the children, yeah. The story. Sometimes the pictures are for the kids, and sometimes just the verbiage and all that, and the story is for pull on on the parents' heartstrings or grandparents or whoever is reading the book to the kids or teachers, right? So many people that read. So welcome again, Diane, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you and learn about you and how it is that you became an author and choosing to write about grief. So tell me a bit about you. Where did you grow up and where do you live now? I like to start that way
Sure.
because I'm just curious.
Well, no, you start at the beginning. That's a good
Yes.
story. That's a good story device. I grew up in New York. And I actually started my career in children's book publishing with Grosset and Dunlap as an editorial assistant for this big publisher. And I was a children's book editor for a number of years. And then I started to do freelance writing while I was working as an editor. And so I went from Grosset and Dunlap to Macmillan to Simon & Schuster, and then worked as an independent book producer for a while. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I focused primarily on the writing because there were fewer editorial and publishing opportunities out in Los Angeles. And so I started writing full time, and that's when the full time writing started in Los Angeles.
And how long ago has that been since you've been in Los Angeles?
Long time.
Long time? Are you an Angelina more than a New Yorker now? Would you or which baseball cap do you wear? Like
the Yankees.
Okay.
Always the Yankees.
You're always
always
a
the
Yankee.
Yankees.
Okay.
You know what they say? You can say. I grew up actually in Brooklyn, and you can take the girl out of Brooklyn, but you can't take the Brooklyn out of the
The
girl.
Brooklyn, yeah, okay. That I can understand. I've lived in this country. I've lived in the States longer than I lived in Colombia, but I'm always gonna be a Colombian, it's like, that
It's
doesn't
just what it is.
it's like my culture, yeah, it is. So, in this journey then of writing, why did you gravitate more towards that young adult and children's book writing in your life? Like, what was it about that particular age group that drew you to writing more for those demographics?
Well, because I started out in children's book publishing, um, working with the illustrators, working with the writers who I was working with at the time was always the best part of, the process. Um,
Because of
and
collaborate, it was more like collaborative.
sure.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
also, the artists are really amazing. I mean, you've seen what Laura brought to the party, and I mean, she just did a magnificent job, as did the professional editor that I had work on the book, Simone Kaplan, and the professional art director that I also had work on the book, Semidar Megad. Both of those women who've been in publishing for a really long time did a fabulous job, and working with Laura was just ideal because she really understood. She understood, and as you can tell, that it's dedicated to both her grandparents. She understood the underlying emotions of the story.
It's so important, yeah, because it does translate. When someone's been through something, you can sense that more. Now, what was it about grief that you wanted to write this children's book about, or picture book? I'm going to call it picture book because it's not just for the children. It's
Right.
also
It's a picture book.
it's a picture book.
I just wanted to say on the side, I'm not comparing myself to him, but Shel Silverstein wrote a book, The Giving
Yes.
Tree, and The Giving Tree gets me every single time. And I guess that's what I was hoping for in writing What Happens After, that kind of dual audience response.
Hmm.
Um, because, as I've said a bunch of times, loss is universal. Grief is very personal. And it's something that everyone has to go through when they lose someone. And it doesn't have to be just one sort of person. It's not always just a parent, or it's not always just a grandparent. There are a multitude of losses that people experience in their lives. And several years back, um, we experienced a loss in our family, and it was unexpected. And in addition, I've also lost my parents in that space of time. And in looking for a book that would assist with the process, was kind of hard, especially for the children in our family. And so there were a couple. There's The Invisible String, and The Rabbit Listened. But at the time of my writing, there wasn't a lot else. I think there are more things now. And so I decided that I would write this for the children in our family and for us. And to be honest, since there was such a dearth of books on the subject, I just decided that probably mainstream publishers were not going to be interested in it, because if they had been, they would have put out books before. So it was my second venture in self-publishing. Most of my books have been done by mainstream publishers, but there are only two that I decided I had to publish myself. So What Happens After came out of that desire to give the children in our family something that would help them through the process.
In that process of writing, like, how was it for you as you're writing and choosing the emotions and wording that you were gonna do? Did you tap into a lot of it for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, almost all the writing I do, you put something of yourself in it,
Mhm.
depending upon what it is and where you're drawing from. But sure, I mean, the
Yeah.
loss of my parents was something that I had to deal with. And And so honestly, the book just came to me from what I felt were the things that I was feeling and that I could sense the children in our family were feeling, and just wanted a way to validate those feelings for them, especially when, it's hard to talk about death with children and it's hard to talk about those big feelings. And I just wanted everyone who was reading it to understand that they are not alone in those feelings, and that there is nothing wrong with those feelings, and that there is no timeline or deadline for getting over those feelings, but also kind of a way forward so that you can keep that person in your life even though they're no longer physically available to you, because they've informed who you are. And you
Yes.
had a relationship with them, and it doesn't end just because they're not here anymore, because you can still talk to them in your mind, not in a not in an
Or in
unstable
books,
way, but or in books.
yeah,
But
or in the creative process, like even like what you did in these aspects of writing a book, or just drawing a paint, making a painting in honor of them, journaling, there's so many ways of communicating and having those emotions out.
right,
Were any of those, yeah, go ahead,
and
sorry.
I was just going to say that I personally, when I see a rainbow, I know that means my mother's there, because she was very attached to rainbows. Or I hear a certain song on the radio suddenly, and I had been missing my father, and suddenly the right song that he used to sing would come onto the radio. So, I mean, without going into any kind of religious beliefs and without going into any kind of concrete assessment of what signs are, the signs matter to the person who is left behind.
Absolutely. I absolutely can agree with that. I did a little Instagram story once regarding that, regarding the signs, and it doesn't matter whether someone else thinks or not that it is or not. It is what it means to you. And if that, and you mentioned here the rainbow, you mentioned the feathers too. Like when I see feathers, I think of my mom. Like there's certain things that just I relate. Numbers. There's numbers that I see that relate relate to them, and then her or my sister. So I connected with it. It is how it makes me feel. That is what is valid and important. Not
It's
that, right?
true,
Yeah.
because that's how people get through the day, and they get through the week and the month and the year, and then they can just sort of absorb that person's spirit and go forward. But no one can tell you how long it will take, and nobody knows how long it will take for each individual person. And I just wanted children especially to understand that
Mhm.
you go on, you do what you do, and you're entitled to the way you feel.
Yes. Yeah. I think that validation is just so important, and hence why I even had this podcast is not. It's so that people do not, like I said in the intro, it's so that people don't feel alone in their process. When you're hearing stories of other people that have gone through something, it just makes you feel like, "Oh, wait, this is normal." Like, okay, like this is I do quote unquote the normal, because who defines what normal is, but it is part of what a lot of people feel in their in their grief. So thank you for creating this. Now, for you, when you were grieving all the the family loss that you had and your parents, what were some of the tools that you felt helped you in your journey of grief, like in some of your in your mourning process?
Um, well, for me, it's always writing uh, and reading. I mean, that's just how I absorb the world. And so I didn't do a ton of reading about grief, but I did do a lot of writing about it in terms of my own experience, the children in my family's experience, and then what ultimately came about was what happens after. So I guess I used the book in a way that's slightly different than everyone else, because writing it was my processing.
your cathartic kind of experience, of being able to share it that way. Yeah, I think that everybody has different, ways in which it works, and usually the things that we gravitate towards normally are the first go-to tool, right? Like if you're a writer, then go to that first. If you run when when you want to
Right.
use
Sure.
it, then go out for a run. If you do, it's I think the go-to first, and then you can add other things to your toolbox that can kind of support you in the grief. In grieving, what have you felt that community, the aspect of community, um, how has it been a process in your own journey, and how do you see that reflected in society to the fact of having other people supporting people in their grief?
I refer to what happens after as the little book that could, because honestly, I'm glad and happy that it is having quite the resonance with so many people. It wasn't my intention to have that happen. I really did do it just for my family. But then in getting so many reviews that and seeing how much it resonated with other people and how much it mattered with librarians and book reviewers and children themselves, because I've given it to a number of children outside my family who were experiencing loss of one kind or another. I got to say, I was really surprised, and it still surprises me. I appreciate the fact that everybody does relate to what the book is saying and feel better after reading it. When I wrote it, I let my um, husband and my daughter read it first because they're my sounding boards. And it made both of them cry, which at first I thought was a bad thing. Um, but my daughter explained to me, no, Mom, this is a good crying. And this is what people need when they're missing somebody. I feel like the country at the moment, and maybe it's the world, is sort of experiencing a second wave of pandemic in that we seem to have a real lack of empathy as an epidemic. And I think that extends a lot to when people die and they don't want to talk about it and they don't want the children to talk about it and they just want to stop talking about the other person because it makes them feel bad. And I thought this was a way of addressing that lack of empathy, because empathy is all we have really when someone is no longer with us. And if the people who were left behind can't somehow understand the loss and the feelings that the other people in their lives are having, then that makes you feel even more separate and even more alone. And so I felt like maybe what the book does is it brings people together in their grief, even though grief is something you do by yourself. Because if you allow children to express what they're thinking, and you can use your religious beliefs as a further discussion, but this is the beginning of that conversation, of addressing the feelings that you don't know what to do with, and I don't want anyone to feel ashamed of those feelings, and have a way of somehow understanding that everybody's feeling this way, although they may be at different stages of their process. And you're allowed to talk about it and you're allowed to feel that way. And then whatever else your further spiritual beliefs may be are something that you can talk about another time. But this is just about feelings.
Hi, I just wanted to take a quick pause and ask that if this episode is speaking to you, I'd love for you to subscribe to my newsletter. Just go to my website, Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between, and you will be receiving some of my newsletters I send every probably couple of weeks. Also, if someone has popped into your mind and you feel that this is something they would resonate with, please send them this episode right now because it may just be what they needed to hear. Now, let's get back to the show. I think that it's very valid what you mentioned regarding the lack of empathy, or how people react to having conversations that make them uncomfortable. It's like, I think that a lot of times it's not necessarily that people don't want to be empathetic, is that literally they do not know or have the coping skills to know what to do when someone cries. It's like, if I ask her about her mom, or if I ask her about her dad, whatever, like, what am I going to do if she starts crying? Like, it's like we don't educate, we're not educated enough as to knowing what to do with people's emotions. And therefore we just prevent it instead, because we're like, well, I just won't mention anything, because if she does and she starts crying, what do I do?
Right. And that
Right.
just makes everybody feel worse.
Right.
And
Right.
it
And
just kind of,
yeah, it's a snowball effect, because you know that there's the elephant in the room that you're not talking about, right? That it's the big grief, and that you are just dismissing it instead of just addressing it. And so, and I think a lot of times too, as a person that's grieving, I feel that when we open up ourselves up and bring it up in the conversation, it gives then permission to others to ask more questions. I think a lot of times people just do not know, like, should I ask or should I not? Like, I wonder, So there can be a little bit of like the miscommunication as well too, of society, of just not really like knowing the what to do.
and I also had wanted in the book to provide kind of a way forward in terms of still having that relationship with the person. So, you honor their birthday by celebrating it. You make something that mattered to them. You sing something that happened to them. I mean, that they loved. You incorporate what you remember of the things that you did together into your, rituals or your holidays or your behaviors. And I think in doing that, there's a comfort to knowing that that person's not forgotten as long as somebody remembers them. And I think there's a real value in not forgetting. Even though, over time, and of course, if you're a child, when something happens, then yes, you do. You forget the voice, you forget the way they looked. And that's what pictures are for. And that's what other people in your family are for, to tell stories about them. And I just think that there's a real value in maintaining the information that that person belonged in your family. That's the way they were. This is what they did. And and then now you're you and you do what you do. I just think that that's a valuable skill to develop and perpetuate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this again is a conversation opener as a parent. Like, you can start reading this, and then that way be able to have these deep conversations. So even having what happens after, even if you have not experienced a death in your family yet, I think it's so important to have it, because I see a lot of parents sometimes struggling to figure out how to bring it up or be truthful about when somebody dies, or when their pet dies. They sometimes don't tell their children um the whole truth, like yeah. So I
Right.
think that that is important, and I want to also honor the fact that you start with your first sentence is, what happens after someone dies? The fact that you already use very clear verbiage from the beginning in the book is so important. How much, like, either researchers, you talk to therapists or psychologists, to know that using the word dying was important for this book, rather than when someone passes on, when we lose someone, using a little bit of the verbiage that sometimes we use that may confuse a child.
Right.
How
You,
was your process in that, and using the actual word?
you said it exactly. I wasn't going to do any kind of euphemistic.
Yes.
I mean, the whole point is someone died, whether it was your pet, your grandparent, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, you know they died because they're not here anymore. And so, when you talk about the euphemisms have the association with religions. You can say they passed, they did that. As far as you can tell, especially if you're a kid, they're dead. And there's no point in pretending otherwise, because then you can't process through it. As I said, if you want to use that as a springboard to then give the religious beliefs that you have in order to explain things, fine. I just didn't think that was my job. I felt my job was to address the, as you say, elephant in the room directly, and then move through it.
Thank you. And thank you for that. Because every therapist that I've had on the podcast that has always said the clarity, especially when talking to kids, is so important. They don't comprehend the euphemisms that we use. And like you said, we can share those afterwards if we want. If we want to say transitioned later on, like if we want to say, you see, the body's not here, but whatever it is you want to do later based on your own beliefs, that's up to you and your family as what to do. But this is a great springboard for this conversation. So thank you so much again for writing this. Diane, I always ask before we wrap up, is there something I have not asked you that you want to make sure that the listeners take from this?
I think the point of your saying, that they should have the book available in case, as opposed to waiting until it's after. I think that that's true. Originally, I had not thought that. But life is very uncertain, and deliveries are not always as expected. And when you need it, you need it. And I think it is a good idea to have something available in the event, especially if you know that it's coming. Because I think that if you can start reading it while the person is still alive, that you wanted to remember when they're gone, reading it with them is, because I've heard a number of instances where somebody has read the book with the grandparent who was close to death. And, you get more of information from the person at the time. And they're like, well, what is your favorite song? And what is your favorite food? And which holiday is your favorite holiday? You know what I mean? There's a value.
I got chills on that, because yes, it's so true. Because then it starts that conversation of just adding then to their knowledge, to their little toolbox of knowledge, so that then they know how to honor the loved one. And I love that.
Yeah. And so I hadn't thought about that honestly before. But then, as I said, when I gave the book to different families and children that I knew were about to experience a loss, they told me that that's how they used it, which, quite honestly, I had not expected. But it's true. It gives you an insight into the person that you may not have had, and I think it touches them in a way that they know that they'll be remembered, and that you think enough of them to ask. And I think that makes for a very important moment before you don't have any of those moments anymore. So that was something that I had not expected. And so I'm just sharing it with you, because that's something that I've newly come to, because somebody said, well, do you think this is a book you should have ahead of time? And in the beginning I said, well, no, I guess you need to wait until after. But no, I don't think you do.
No, absolutely. It's because when we have these conversations, when it's already, I'll give an example. When someone is already ill, and then let's just say an aging parent, they're already ill, and you start asking, well, what do you want your funeral to look like, or as they're aging? And then sometimes it's really uncomfortable at that point, because it's as if you're saying, well, you are not going to survive this, or whatever it is. That's not the thing, is that it's because it's conversations we didn't have when we were not sick, which again, these are conversations we should all be having anyway, because the reality is we are all going to die. We just don't know the when and who's going to go first. We don't know that. We don't know who's going to be planning the funeral of who. But if we don't have these conversations with other people, then we don't know. Even a parent reading to their child about this, it's also giving hope for the child, because I know that for me as a child, one of my biggest fears was my parents dying, right? Growing up, like that was always something I would think of. But already here, you're already establishing that connection and that
Doesn't
remembrance
end,
can continue,
right?
correct? So you're already sharing that straight on. So I think it is extremely important to have this, because again, if we already can educate ourselves and educate our children about that, it takes a little bit of the of the sting of the sting away. Not all of it, because we're still going to have all these emotions, but it can at least have this conversation and have some sense of the hope of the process. So thank you for sharing this book.
Well, thank you for being interested in it and for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Diane. So, Diane, let's share with people where they can buy What Happens After. What's the best place for them to be able to buy it?
Well, it's wherever you buy books online. So I don't like to plug one particular
Okay,
one
that's
over
fine.
another, but
But so
like
anywhere on there.
bookshop.org, Barnes and
Okay.
Noble. I mean, you can order it through any of the online book purchasing. Um, it's printed and distributed by Ingram Spark. So if you have an Ingram Spark account or you happen to be a bookseller, that you can also get your same normal discounts and stuff. So you can order it that way. Honestly, I think it's also available in a lot of Los Angeles libraries, because they informed me that they purchased a bunch of them for the different libraries. It's available online as an ebook, and it's also available as an accompanied Audible book.
Oh, wonderful.
Friend of mine, the actress Catherine Ross, is the narrative voice of the book, and she does such a beautiful job. I mean, every time I listen to her, it makes me cry. And then, as somebody once said to me, the book is like a hug. And that is just how I meant it to be, is that it's a hug to make you feel minimally better when you're not feeling very well at all. And I'm just so grateful to the person who said that, because that's really what I meant. But you can get it anywhere online, and eventually they'll send it to you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, Diane, for this hug that you gave the world with your book. So thank you again. This was Diane Namm, and you can find her also on her website and on her links, and I'll make sure to put those below. So thank you,
Great.
Diane.
Thank you so much, honey.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.